Take a look at this board state for me. On one end, we have an Akshan player just surviving with 4 different followers, as well as Akshan's Warlord's Horde on the board. On the other end, we have an Affiliate Zoe player who has a full board of elusive units thanks to the combination of leveled Zoe alongside Submersible. When you also take a look at the Nexus health of 18 on the Affiliate Zoe player side and only 4 on the Akshan player side, it's pretty clear that the Affiliate Zoe player is not only extremely well positioned in this game, but very likely to win it. Right? Well, let's jump forward a little bit and see exactly how this game concludes.
Good luck. Yeah. Yeah. Tough one, right? Yeah? How about this one? Your Thrall's deck turned into a Zero Relia feels weird, man. Here's a third one. 6 attacks in a turn seems pretty good. I agree. This seems pretty okay. Yeah, I was super supposed to lose that.
This is the diabolical smirk of an Akshan Infinite player. How's it going, YouTube? My name is Optima, and today we'll be analyzing a rising combo deck within the Legends of Runeterra community known as Akshan Infinite. Over the past few days, this infinite combo deck, Akshan Infinite, has become the central topic of discussion within the Runeterra community, mostly due to players expressing their discontentment with the deck's existence. Players are becoming frustrated mostly not due to the deck's power level, but instead due to the way the deck is able to control the flow of the game. Let's take a deeper look at this situation and at the wider ranging opinions currently circulating around this topic. Here's the question we want you to answer by the end of the video in the comment section below. Can a infinite combo deck be a healthy part of a CCG's metagame, or are these types of strategies too polarizing and risk alienating a large portion of the player base? Let us know your thoughts, opinions, and everything else in that comment section below. We hope you enjoyed the video. Let's get to it. So, you may already be asking yourself, what is an infinite combo deck and why do players seem to dislike them? Well, allow me to explain. The Slate Spire fandom page defines an infinite combo deck as a setup that allows you to keep playing the same cards forever in a single turn, either through not using resources or regaining the resources used. This defines it quite nicely, especially for Runeterra, and the key word to focus in on in that definition is forever. A deck can only truly be an infinite combo deck if it does have the ability to eventually execute actions for an infinite amount of time. This is exactly why these decks are seen as polarizing. When you consider that card gamers already really dislike when their opponents take long amounts of times to execute their turns, you can easily see why an infinite combo deck that can really draw out some turns would be seen as not the most welcoming thing within the competitive card gaming community. Infinite combo decks have a way of making players feel like they're being held hostage or like they're stuck just watching their opponent play the game due to the long combo turns. These decks are often ridiculed for not having proper counterplay that allows you to disrupt the combo. Some players relish in the fact that they have more control over the flow of the game with infinite combo decks and choose to annoy their opponents through taking as long as possible to execute their actions each turn. This is commonly referred to as roping. When you consider all these different factors, it starts to make a lot of sense how these infinite combo decks create quite the hectic situation when one rises in popularity. This is not the first case of an infinite combo deck becoming a popular choice around the Runeterra community. During the Call of the Mountain expansion, there was a Zephyr Sage infinite combo deck that rose in prominence. This deck wanted to use Revitalizing Roar on a Zephyr Sage to make it cost 0 mana, then play it so that it creates an exact copy, so another 0 mana Zephyr Sage in hand. So enabling you to play an infinite amount of 0 mana Zephyr Sages. With the lack of keywords, overwhelm, or big stats, this, however, created some of the most agonizing mirror matches the game has ever seen. Move forward multiple seasons and we got our first iteration of an Akshan Infinite deck. Akshan alongside Zilean was able to discount cards while Zilean focused on providing additional draw and wiping units through his time bombs. Most importantly, the Ionia followers in Novari Conspirator and Solitary Monk provided recall synergy that truly allowed the deck to be infinite. This deck, however, lacked a true win condition, so games against it lasted an eternity. Akshan Zilean Infinite Time Bombs was easily one of the worst decks to ever face in the history of Legends of Runeterra due to the fact that games against it were just dragged out to extreme lengths. Then we progress to present day, where we now have Akshan Infinite being uplifted by P&Z cards as well as the newly introduced Sands of Time. The deck wants to outlast its opponent's game plan so it can finish off Akshan's Warlord's Horde. It then proceeds to use counterfeit copies on Founded Power, making additional copies of the card. With that amount of draw and your cards now costing 0 mana, you eventually draw your Thrumming Swarm, which you can fill your entire board up with since it costs 0 mana and creates a copy in hand, an exact copy if you've leveled the champion. Then your Overwhelm Insect army is ready to finish the game. Some versions, however, are foregoing Thrumming Swarm and instead are relying on Parallel Convergence as a sole win condition. These decks definitely take a little bit longer to achieve their win condition. Unlike both of the aforementioned decks, this one does still have a clear-cut win condition it attempts to achieve. However, how frustrating the deck is to play against still is largely up to the pilot's discretion, creating a less than ideal situation. Integrity appears to be a reoccurring overarching topic within competitive card game communities, even online ones like Legends of Runeterra. Whether it's due to players having bad manners, roping, bug abusing, stream sniping, using timer as a win condition, or choosing to play an infinite deck on ladder, we have seen many scenarios where players have felt the need to discuss integrity within the game. While some scenarios have been very clear that they are not okay, such as stream sniping, I think other ones such as playing an infinite deck, a deck that utilizes a widely disliked strategy, or even the recent Master Tracker controversy, just aren't as clear cut as the others. We decided to have a chat with talented player and consistent streamer LuserBeam. LuserBeam happened to be one of the first few Runeterra players to not only see potential in this new iteration of Akshan Infinite, but invest time in learning and optimizing the deck. LuserBeam is a veteran Runeterra and CCG player who tends to favor combo-oriented decks. Considering that LuserBeam's been able to sustain a 70% win rate with over 20 games with Akshan Infinite in Masters, we decided he would be a great person to provide us an additional perspective on this matter. How's it going over there, man, LuserBeam? How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Just queued some games of Runeterra earlier today, so I'm feeling it. I'm feeling this deck.
How did you discover this current iteration of the deck? Did you try building it in this meta, or did you see someone else having success with it? How did that go?
Yeah, so I saw what would I say? I saw whispers of it. I saw it occasionally on ladder ever since the beginning of the expansion, because people very quickly realized that Sands of Time is a very, very, very good card that would enable in Akshan Infinite type strategy a whole lot easier. I've just seen other people's takes on it across the community. If big name that comes to mind would be MTux. He's probably the other player in our server who's actually dedicating a lot of time to refining the deck. And eventually, Uh, it really caught on to me. I normally don't have interest in decks that just go infinite. Like the Ionia iteration a couple seasons back, that really wasn't for me. Um, but the but this deck is different. It is an infinite deck, but it's not quite. The ultimate goal is to really just use your fancy cards that are traditionally used for an infinite deck to actually assemble a real way to kill your opponent. So I get to actually spin my wheels and I get to actually end the game, which is something that the previous infinite decks just didn't have.
Okay.
Yeah, a traditional infinite deck, way shorter. You can combo off in a couple of minutes if you know what you're doing.
So I assume that was the main thing that then like kind of captivated you about the deck, was the fact that it had a real legitimate win con that it was trying to achieve, rather than kind of the spinning the wheels thing that the previous decks did, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a deck that is currently rocking like a 36% win rate currently on Runeterra AR when you look at how the general populace is doing when piloting the deck. So when you see stuff like that, especially now that you're one of the top players on the other end of the spectrum who's actually seeing success with the deck, when you see that, what do you kind of conclude from those scenarios? Do you think it's really, this is a tough deck to pilot? Because we also saw this previously with like Echo Zillion, where like top players were doing a lot better on the deck than a general player. So do you think that's a tough deck to pilot? People just autopiloting too much? What do you think actually is going on there when those situations occur? And how do you think a dev should perceive situations like this, where the win rate is not coinciding with the way people are feeling about the deck?
Okay, so yeah, that's a complex question. So let's tackle those. Yeah. But let's tackle those issues one at a time. Yeah, the first one. Yeah, let's just what do I think about the differences in win rates? Because the general win rate's like what, 36% right now?
36%.
Yeah. So there, I wanted to say for card games in general, but even in LOR, previous seasons and previous expansions, there tends to be a deck that can get a lot of wins in a lot of situations, but when your average player on ladder tries to play it, they find themselves losing a whole lot more. This usually means that, like in the tournament scene, you'll see that deck a whole lot more for something like Echo Zillion, or most popular of these is probably Lee Sin. Lee Sin has rarely been great on ladder statistically. These decks are just extremely complex, and they're probably the hardest decks to pilot in the game. And for this deck, I would say that this is probably one of the harder decks to pilot in the game's history. There are so many different little decisions that you have to take into account, literally from turn one of the game. So, and the deck is so tight. It is so every card is meant to serve a specific purpose, that doing even the most minor of misplays early in the game can end up losing you the game later on. Even while you're comboing off, using the wrong type of card to predict, or choosing the slightly worse predict option, all of these can end in you losing the game. So a more inexperienced player with complex combo decks like these might just be making the decisions that are not quite optimal. Maybe they'll get there, but the odds are they're getting punished for it more often than not. So I think that would be the reason for the majority of these abysmal win rates. Like, this win rate is probably one of the worst win rates I've ever seen in a meta while also being legitimate. So yeah,
it is. It's definitely quite staggering. So I thought it was a very interesting thing to kind of get your opinion on, considering that you are one of the people who is on the opposite side. Like, hey, I'm winning with this deck. I don't know what's going wrong for you guys. And yeah, like I said, we've seen that before with some other decks. So it's always interesting when you get these anomalies, because that's not something you generally see. If a deck's good, generally even the average player can pilot it to at least a decent win rate. But yeah, you do get those few decks that are that next level of complex. However, you get people who don't like hearing that. They're like, your deck isn't complex, even when you see these situations. But I would have to say, I don't know what else you can really conclude to when you see these situations. What else can you conclude?
Yeah.
And especially when you play these decks, like I haven't played this particular one, but I did play Echo Zillion. I very much felt like Echo Zillion had a little bit more complexity to it than the average player was probably perceiving. So it just really makes sense to me at the end of the day. So I could definitely see that being kind of the main issue there. Furthermore, though, I did kind of ask you an extra question there that now that it has been asked, why not? Let's get your answer to that.
Sure.
What do you believe a dev should do in those scenarios where they do kind of have a little bit of an outcry from their player base about like, hey, we don't really like the way this deck works? From some people, obviously not everyone's saying that, but then you go look at the win rate and it's so low. How do you think they should kind of navigate those scenarios?
So yeah, from a developer's perspective, now I'm no experienced game dev, but I do have plenty of experience being in card games and watching the public cry out about certain decks or certain types of cards that
certain strategies
that may or may not deserve it. Now, for something like this, my general philosophy for game design is the ultimate goal of the game is to be fun. So if the game is ending up not being fun for a lot of people, then that's probably the number one reason to make a change. I think that should supersede even win rate. I think win rate is a really good stat to go off of, a good metric, because if there are absurdly high win rates for the deck, then obviously something's wrong, something's a bit overtuned. But at the same time, there's just this undeniable factor of whether or not playing the card is fun. Like, just think about Draven. Draven stayed at 3 HP forever. And nobody complained about 3 HP Draven, even though he was like one of the best champs in the game, easily the best Noxus champ. But people were having a lot of fun with him, and he was very approachable as a champ. So everyone got the opportunity to have fun with Draven. That's why they held off on nerfing him for so long, I would suspect. And I think that a similar philosophy for most other cards would be the right way to go. I do suspect a lot of this is leftover resentment for the previous iterations of the Infinite deck that just took a million turns to do nothing. Like, this deck will actually end the game very quickly. I would say this deck is a lot closer to Lee Sin than it is to like a Zephyr Sage hostage deck. Like, it actually is a combo deck focused on going towards a game plan and actually executing the game plan. It's just that people see a lot of zero cost cards being played, and they're probably reminded of those old days where you would just terrorize ladder with a deck that essentially does nothing. One game can last a whole hour. Like, we don't want that. Like one of these games, when I do it as someone who actually like knows how to play the deck very well, the game will last like 10 minutes maybe. Like, it feels like a very normal game, and then the combo turn will take like 3-4 minutes on average.
Okay, I have to ask though, what's the most common turn you're noticing that you like finish the game on?
Usually turn 7.
Turn 7, okay, that's not bad at all. It's really not bad.
If you're really ballsy and you just want to go for it and you don't mind like risking it all, you can get some turn 6 wins in. I think that there are probably more turn 6 wins than I would prefer. I think the deck is a bit overtuned, but like the outcries that I see of just like deleting the deck from existence, I don't really think that that's warranted.
Okay.
It's just another combo deck, and I think if people actually got used to it, or people got better at this deck, people would start recognizing that these games don't last 30 minutes. Like, this just lasts as long as a regular game. It just has that one turn where a lot of stuff happens. I'd probably nerf Sands of Time somehow, and the deck would probably be completely fine.
Yeah, and especially when you consider that Sands of Times is like showing up in some other decks too as a strong option, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Actually, playing against combo decks, even when I'm not playing, I try to keep my gameplay pretty varied as far as the tournament scene goes. I don't want to be predictable, but I would say that playing against combo decks is very, very engaging and fun to me. Just because, as somebody who has experience with these combo decks, as I can actually use my skill as a combo player to effectively read what my opponent's trying to do and read what cards are probably in their hand. So it's very engaging as the non-combo player when I'm the non-combo player, because I can see the game plan that they're trying to execute, and I can play the game of trying to stop their game plan, which a lot of the times which a lot of times has a lot of interesting decisions to it.
Yeah. Just for clarity purposes, I know that you're probably alluding to typical combo decks and not like the previous iteration of this Infinite combo deck that didn't really have like a.
Oh yeah. No. Previous win conless Infinite, just like burn it to the ground. I never liked playing against that deck. That deck was terrible. If I saw it in a tournament, I would ban it even if it wasn't right. Like that's
yeah. Love to see it. Love to see it. Yes. I get your points there and I appreciate you. Let's finish this interview off. And once again, thank you for your time, LuserBeam. It's been really nice getting to learn a little bit more about you as a player and as a person through this interview. I thought a great way to finish off this discussion is just kind of talk about how we're feeling about the current state of Runeterra gameplay-wise. When we consider the fact that we aren't too far off from the kind of just out of nowhere decision it almost felt like to change the way that cards are played and the way that casting works within the game. And then when you add that in with the fact that we also got our first taste of what is kind of a groundbreaking thing in Runeterra champions, which are champions that are not tied to a specific region, so they open up all these really different deck building opportunities. When you consider all these different gameplay things going on and even think about the future of the game, how are you feeling right now about Runeterra gameplay wise and just the kind of different direction it's currently headed in? And then you could finish that off with also letting me know, has the Worldwalker expansion been a pleasant experience for you with the new champions and the new cards and everything else that came with it?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of the like casting and timing changes, I think they were pretty negligible for the most part. There were a couple of situations where it really mattered. I think that really those changes just point to more creative and interesting design choices in future expansions. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that pans out. I personally don't really have a stake in the timing change. I don't really think it makes a difference one way or another. Like there are a couple of cards it breaks, like Ezreal, but Ezreal as a whole is probably one of the lower power champs in the meta. So it's not really, we're not really at a point where any of the negatives from the timing changes have really reared their ugly heads in our faces yet. So overall, I think I'm pretty positive towards those changes. This meta and the expansion overall, I'm gonna be real with you. This is probably in contest for one of my favorite metas or expansions of the entire game's history. There's just so much for you to do. There are so many different options that you can take as a player. You have so many different variations and different types of decks. There are several interesting ways to approach aggro, to approach mid-rangey piles, to approach control decks, to approach combo decks. If you want to play a certain style of deck, there is something competitive for you out there. I love that exists right now. And the cards released in the Worldwalker expansion, they've been incredibly interesting. They've been boundary pushing, and yeah, they've been a bit overtuned because that's what Riot likes to do. They like to make their cards enter with like a little flash in the pan type of effect. But overall, they're cool cards, and I'm really enjoying the design choices that have been made for the expansion. So I'm really excited for card printings in the future, because I think they knocked it out of the park with this one.
Awesome. Yeah, we did get our little sneak peek preview that we are getting a new champion soon. So coming from the void. So things are definitely looking quite exciting for the future of the game, just gameplay wise. And I would definitely have to agree. This meta looks really solid. And I love the fact that there's a little bit of everything for all the different play styles. I did just have to ask you one more question. As such an OTK specialist, let us know, what is your favorite OTK combo deck of all Runeterra history? What was your favorite
all
one?
Runeterra history?
Yeah,
I'm gonna be real with you. My original claim to fame, the Sivir Ionia OTK deck. I have it still has got a soft spot in my heart, right there, just right in the center. I love that deck to death. And any Riot devs, if you're listening to this, unnerf Flurry of Fists. Bring it back to 3 mana, you cowards.
Hey, there's nothing like throwing that on a spell shield ruin runner and watching your opponent cry. Thank you so much once again for your time, man. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. All links in the descriptions to LuserBeam's Twitter, his Twitch, where he streams very regularly. And did you want to say any final thoughts? Any like shout out, like if you want to shout out your stream, if you want to say exactly what days you stream and any of that, you by all means have the floor.
Okay, sure. Shout out to my stream. I try to stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays pretty regularly. I've been doing a thing lately where I've been partaking in team tournaments with Aegis Esports. I've had a lot of fun in trying to get creative with a new format. So shout out to my teammates too. Floppy Mudkip, Card Gamer, Bitter, Boomer from NA. All those boys. They're all great. I love you all my team members. But yeah, tune into my streams Tuesdays and Thursdays around 8 p.m. EST. I'm not amazing with scheduling, but I do try to stay consistent.
Look out for LuserBeam. Very fun individual, always in the top of that master's ladder and doing his thing with these OTK decks. That pretty much wraps up this report about Akshan Infinite and Infinite combo decks as a whole. These conversations about controversial topics can get pretty one-sided due to one side usually being more vocal than the other. After the discussion we had today, please let us know your thoughts in the comment section below on the topic at hand. Can infinite combo decks be a healthy part of a CCG's meta, or are they inherently too polarizing and risk alienating a significant portion of the player base? Thank you all so much for watching. It truly means a lot. Make sure to also get subscribed and like the video if you haven't done those two things already. Really helps out and lets us know you want more content. Until next time.